Hey team, welcome to another video. We are at my house to kind of go through a housing 101 tutorial. Once you have purchased your land, what do you do next? And the first thing I want to talk about is housing permits. So once you buy the land, you have a housing permit that you need to get. There are really two ways that you can get this. The easiest way is you just go social, housing, estate hall, purchase construction permit, and you go from there. The other thing you can do is you can look in the market board, and I'm going to cover that right now. Now the market board can be a little bit good or bad, and I'm going to show you both good and bad as we head down to the market board here. So I'm going to click on the board, and all of the stuff in the light blue at the bottom is housing related. If I click on exterior fixtures, the very first things that come up are housing permits. And you can see by all the zeros that there's not very many for sale. So where most of you are probably going to purchase this is from the sutler in the market in your housing area, or any of the housing areas really, because now you can put any type of house on any type of land. But let's go ahead and find one that has one for sale. So if you look, this is an Oasis housing permit, and it costs 1 million gil. And if I click on it, there's one for sale. Someone's got it up for sale. This is actually sitting on their retainer in the game, and they want 50 million gil for it. So don't buy it. If I go into the history though, you can see some people that made a good buying decision and some people that made a not so good buying decision. So for example, the person on December 19th that got this for 40,000 gil, they saved 960,000 gil by looking on the market board. This person that spent on 2/5 on February 15th of last year 42 million gil to buy it, they didn't do so well. So I would start with the market board for your permit and see if you can buy any permit for less. Don't worry about if it's the kind of house you want. Don't worry about any of that. So as I scroll past the permits, I get into the different housing components that are for sale. Now check this out. Riviera Cottage roof. I can get a Riviera Cottage roof for 15,000 gil. So you're going to be able to find lots of housing styles that are inexpensive to purchase, all the way up to, I type Kugani, maybe it's Shirogane Castle Walls. I don't know why I always goof that up. If I just go to, for example, a medium house for Shirogane Castle Walls, now I'm looking at 4 to 7 million for that housing setup. So you can go from, one that has components for a few thousand all the way up to multiple millions, but you have to start with a permit. Once you have bought a permit once, you're done. What do I mean by that? Well, I bought a cottage permit, and it cost 450,000 gil to buy that when I got my cottage. When I bought my medium house, it took my house that I had, the cottage, and put a medium version of it right on the new land. What that means is once you've bought a permit one time, as long as you're kind of relocating within the same type of housing, whether it's personal or free company, you're not going to have to buy that permit again. So something else important to keep in mind there. Now, on to the 45 days. Why is 45 days important? Well, it impacts one of two things. One, again, it's how long you have to get that permit once you've bought the land. Two, it's how long you can have of not entering your house before it gets repossessed and demolished. So as we've discussed in other videos, if you don't use the house in a certain amount of time, it's going to get taken away from you, which is only fair. What I found interesting when I was researching this is I thought it was if you didn't log into the game in a certain amount of time, then you lose your house. But what I found out is if you don't use the house, you lose the house. So what that means is you could be logging in and out of the game the whole time, never enter your house, and lose it, which is interesting. So the good news here again is most of us, we're going to go into our house. Or at the very minimum, we're going to look at that email and go, oh, wait, I got to go into my house. And if we don't, it means we're probably not playing and someone else should benefit from that house. So that's a little bit about the permit process, a little bit about the importance of remembering 45 days. Now, once you have the permit and you are using that housing style, or you've picked out a different style that you like, it's time to set up your house. And I want to start by talking through some of the housing NPCs that you can get. And I'll be scrolling pictures of some of these across the screen right now. Thank you, Beckett from Midgard Sormer, who provided these images online. So I'm going to order these NPCs that you can get in what I believe is the order of importance. So which are the NPCs that you definitely should have, and which are the ones that maybe not so important. So where do you get NPCs? So first, the Sutler, again, is a place where you can purchase the permits for these. And just look for, Allegan Repair Node. That's the Mender, the Allegan style, right? So just look through the different permits that the Sutler sells, and you'll be able to figure out the right one. You're smart. Number one, most important NPC that I believe you want to have is the Mender. Obvious reasons. We use our gear and we need a really easy way in order to be able to get it mended and repaired. So number one would be get a Mender or an Allegan Repair Mode. Allegan Repair Node, whatever they're called. Whatever the Mender is called, get it. Number two would be a Steward. Now, Steward can be a little bit confusing for a few reasons. Stewards go by many different names. They can be called a Steward permit, at which time when you go to use the Steward, you'll be able to choose a gender, and then that Steward gets called a manservant or a maidservant, like you can see here with my Namazu, is called a manservant. It's a Steward. The other one that it can be called is a Hokonin, which is what it's called in Shirogane. So I'm going to go through that again just because it can be a little bit confusing. But what they sell are your basic housing items. You can totally furnish out your house for not a lot of gil from just what these NPCs sell. So remember, it could be called a Steward permit when you go to buy it. It could be called a Hokonin permit if you go to buy it in Shirogane. And then when you use it, it could be called a manservant or a maidservant based on whichever version you buy. The next one I would recommend you get, very important, is a materia melder. Super convenient to be able to hit the close market board near your house, go to your own materia melder and get all of that done yourself. If you're not leveled in your, crafters and all that, like I'm not, to be able to meld every type of materia. The next one that I would recommend is the material supplier. They sell crafting materials. That's a good one to get if you're into crafting. I do not currently have that one. And then the last one that I do recommend is the Junkmonger. The Junkmonger is nice because they sell gardening items and dyes. So you can get the gardening patches from them to garden from. You can see that on your screen right now. And you can buy various dyes right from them. So that's super handy. The other thing that's nice about having the manservant, maidservant, steward, whatever, and the Junkmonger and the material supplier is not just because of the things you can buy from them, but the things you can sell to them. So as you're dealing with your retainers and they're bringing back things, and maybe it's just something you want to sell because it's a piece of gear you don't need, it's nice to have a vendor right there on site that you can just sell right to. Next thing I want to talk about are mannequins. And mannequins are pretty interesting. And to show you this, I'm going to take just a moment and port to my wife's house. All right. As you can see, my wife has a lot of mannequins at her place. And what's cool about mannequins is a couple things. One, you can display gear on them. So you can see they're all wearing different types of gear. You can make them male, female, boys, girls. You can make them whatever you want, and you can display different gear on them. The other thing that's useful is if someone visits your house and let's say they want to buy this gear, I could click on this mannequin right here. It's going to bring up the items that are on the mannequin, and I can buy it. If I click on this, it allows me to purchase it right here from the mannequin. How cool is that? You can have your own clothing storefront in your house. What's nice is they're connected to your retainers. So my wife has a retainer called Starlana. These clothes for sale that she made with her weaver are for sale on that retainer. And then when you put the mannequin up, you decide what retainer you want it to be connected to and what items you want it to be wearing. So a really cool kind of side storefront that I don't think a lot of people consider, and one I wanted to talk about today. Next thing I want to talk about is going to require us to go back to my house, so I'll be right back with you. All right, now that we're back in my house and we've talked about what to do after you buy the land, getting a permit, we've talked about the importance of remembering 45 days, we've talked about housing NPCs, and we've talked about mannequins. Let's talk about some more housing items that you can interact with that you might want to consider getting. And the first one is this little box you see here on the table. Now there's two versions of the Orchestrion, three versions rather. Version number 1 is the small one you see here. There's also a tall one, I'll show an image of that. And then there's a Moogle one, which is very cool, that you can get from the Mog Station. And if you watch the housing tour of Syra Calypso's houses that I put on the channel, you can see what that looks like. But what's cool about the Orchestrion is it gives a lot of purpose to all those Orchestrion rolls that we collect. Oop, I clicked on the message book by mistake. And what's cool is with the Orchestrion, it actually gives a pretty big purpose for all those Orchestrion rolls that you've been collecting. If you click on it, what it allows you to do is use any of your learned Orchestrion rolls to play music in your house, and you can do this a couple different ways. One, you can have the same song playing over and over, or you can set up a playlist like what I've done here. I want to cover a couple quick things about the playlist because it can be a little confusing. So when I hit edit playlist, it's going to bring up my playlist, and I'm going to click on one of the positions that I want to edit, or if there's an empty position, you can edit that one. It's going to bring up the different tracks that you have based on the different types, and make sure you click this only display rolls obtained. That way you're not scrolling through a long list of Orchestrions that you don't have. Now let's say instead of having Sands of Blood, I wanted I Am the Sea. So I just click on I Am the Sea, and it adds that to my playlist. I can then use these buttons to move that up or down on the playlist. Now, here's what's important. Don't forget to use right click when you're editing this. So I'm going to save this playlist. It's going to say it'll affect the playlist. Yep, that's fine. Now I'm back in my playlist. If I right click here, it's going to give me some nice options. I can play the entire playlist over and over again, or I can play it all at once rather. I can shuffle the playlist, which is what I use. It just picks random songs, or I can repeat the same song, or I can just listen to that song. So once you're done editing your playlist, just don't forget to go back in and get the playlist going again with shuffle or play all, whichever. Down here you've also got some play all, shuffle, and repeat buttons that you can use for your convenience as well. So it's a little bit about how the Orchestrion works. Next one I want to talk about is the message book, which is here. And there's two versions of the message book. There's the small one that you see I've got here, and then there's a Dodo outdoor version. I'll show an image of that. And this is where people can come in and leave you messages. And thank you everyone out there who's left me messages in my message book since seeing some of the videos. That just, it warms my heart, means the world to me. So thank you for that. So people can leave me messages. If you're visiting their house, please leave them a message. I know I preach that a lot. But also, if you invest in a house and you invest all that time, put a message book in it so that people can congratulate you on it. Next thing I want to talk about is the mailbox, also called the letterbox. which is nice. It's just like any of the Moogles out in the world, and it is the same functionality. You can send and receive letters, you can send and receive items, whether that's with Square Enix, things you've bought from the market station, or Mog station rather, or it's items and messages that you're sending back and forth with other players. So that's a good item to have as well, is a letterbox. Next I want to talk about the different bells that you can have. And for this, we're going to warp back to my wife's house. Oh shoot, I went to the wrong house. Alright team, and as always, if you have any questions about any of these things that I'm covering, please let me know. But I wanted to show these at my wife's house for a couple of reasons. One, she has both the bells. So here on the left is a crystal bell, and that summons the esthetician to come and change the way you look, cut your hair, the same type of thing that you would do in an inn. The bell on the right is a summoning bell, and that is what you use to summon your retainers, just like any other summoning bell out in the world. So definitely look at getting at least the summoning bell, if not both. But the reason I wanted to show you this is, what's cool is if you have some sort of desk like this, and you simply put the summoning bell into it, it makes it more like a desk bell than a bell stand. So it's kind of like a bonus housing tip by showing it this way. So back to the house here. Next thing I want to talk about is the expansion of duties permit. This can also be purchased from the sutler, and what this allows you to do is put retainers outside. Like you see, I've got my retainer Kid Karate here hanging out outside, and it's just a cool way to dress up the outside of your house and have your retainers hanging out. And actually, I wanted to show real quick how these work. And what's beneficial about showing this is it'll also teach you how to set up any NPC in your house. So what'll happen is when you purchase a NPC permit, it's going to give you one of these items here. Expansion of duties permit. It'll also be called a mender permit or a steward permit. And it'll also have the designation. So A1 is how the A series looks that I showed earlier, that type of thing. So you get one of these permits. Then what you do is you go into your housing menu and you go either to indoor or outdoor furnishings, and then you can click on, I right click a lot of the time. You can right click on this and hit place. And what it's going to do is going to ask you which retainer you want to use. I'm going to use Trixie Candy. And then it's going to pull out this little... Oop, I just lost him. It's going to pull out this little placeholder mannequin. And you just click where you want to put them. And then when you exit out of the housing menu, you'll notice that your retainer is there and all set up. And what's cool is these are actually functional, so I can right click and see and access the menu for that retainer, and I can also change their appearance from here as well, and their pose, and you can kind of glamour them up a little bit, which is pretty cool. So that's a little bit about the expansion of duties permit. Alright, next we're going to talk about aquariums. You can see my aquarium wall in my house there on the screen. And what aquariums allow you to do are display compatible fish that you have either caught or purchased from the market board. There are over 100 different fish that are compatible with aquariums in the game. I've got a spreadsheet listing them all, and one of my dreams is to someday create a video that has all of them, so someone could literally watch this video and see what every aquarium fish in the game looks like. It's a huge project, and I'm probably 20% of the way through it, if that, so that one will take me a little bit. But anyway, the way aquariums work, real simple. Once you have put your aquarium up, you just click on it, and it's going to bring up this interface where you can drag and drop fish into it. There are different aquarium sizes, there are different fish sizes, there's also freshwater versus saltwater. So if I wanted to display this cavalry catfish, for example, I would bring that over and I would click it here. The fish is too large, I'd have to remove all. I can drag this over here and it will now display that catfish. And what's nice is if you want to see what any fish look like, you can always cancel right out of that and it will go back to what you had. You don't lose any of the fish. The next thing I want to talk about regarding aquariums are the trimmings. The trimmings are the background that you see here. This particular one you have to get from the market board or craft it. But there are many trimmings that you can get quite inexpensively that people sell on the market board for significantly more than they're worth. So I'm going to show you how to buy the trimmings. And once you've bought them, you just drag them over to the accessories section of your aquarium. So I'll be right back with you. Alright, so we're here at the dappled stalls in the lavender beds. And I wanted to show you this because like we were talking about aquarium trimmings. Go over to this guy here. This is Bob. And Bob is the material supplier. And if I go to purchase items and I scroll down a bit, they're kind of hidden in the middle. So at the bottom I've got seeds for plants and at the top I've got different crafting materials. A lot of people miss this. Right there in the middle for $9.67 a piece are all of the trimmings for the aquarium. So this one is not known by a lot of people and they'll go to the market board and spend thousands to get these trimmings. So you do with that information what you will, but at least make sure you're saving the money. I always recommend the, where is it? Sunken Treasure Tank trimmings. I think they look most like a real fish tank, and that's what I use in all of mine except for the one that I have that's crafted. While we're here, you've also got the housing merchant here who sells a lot of external housing items that you can buy and a lot of Orchestrions as well. So take a moment. The NPCs that you can place in your house are great for your everyday items, but the ones at the actual merchant areas in the housing districts, they do have things that you can't get from them. Alright, so far we've talked about all of the items you need for your house to deal with everyday maintenance, whether it's repairing your gear, buying and selling items, showing off things you have for sale on the market, putting your retainers out on the yard, sending and receiving letters. So we've covered all of the functional stuff. The other housing items that I wanted to talk about are the items that when you click on them, they do something. There are a ton of items in the game like this, and in the screen here there are a couple right now. So one is the Bahamut statue. If I click on that, it lights up, which is pretty cool. And then the shower over here, if I click on that, the shower turns on. A lot of people use this for water features, things like that. Another example here is the sink. If I click on the sink, it turns on and off. There are just tons of items in the game that when you click on them, you can interact with them. Another one would be food. There are a lot of food items that you can display in your housing areas, and then when you click on them, you can eat the food. Another one would be there's lighting. So if I click on this light here, you can see the light dims and turns back on. So all kinds of items that you can interact with in the game, which is very cool. As an example of how to use some of these items, the sink that I have here in my house is actually a platter of food that all the food's been eaten, and I just kept the platter out. And then the warm and cold, I don't know if you can hear that or not, the warm and cold water faucets are music boxes that I've glitched into the cabinetry there. So tons of interactive items in the game. I'll let you discover more of those kind of on your own. But something else to consider with housing. Last thing I wanted to do is just give a real brief beginner's guide to the housing menu. The menu that you use to do everything for housing. So if you go down to social, you're going to find the housing menu there. And if I click on that, I'm going to see a few different options. Option 1, indoor furnishings. That is essentially how you enter the menu to edit your house and to set up your house. You've got stored items, all of that. That's a housing 201 to go through all that. But just remember that the indoor furnishings menu is where you go to set up your indoor furnishings. Furnishings color is once you click on that, anything that can be dyed as far as a furniture item, you click on it. And if you've got the dye, uses the same dye as everything else, you can change the color. So if I wanted the table to be purple, or if I wanted the table to be red, you can kind of preview how that works. So if it's not dyeable, it just won't let you change it. All right, so that's furnishings color. Remodel interior. Here's where you go to change the wall style. You can change the flooring, and you can change the ceiling light on each of your floors. There are also items in the game, housing items like this brick, which allows you to kind of break up the way the wall looks a little bit. So here you've got my main floor interior wall is the golden upholstered interior wall, and then I've used additional housing items of the brick wall here to add that to the house. There's a preview menu as well that I haven't done too much with, but it's a way that you can kind of preview changes in the way your house looks. You've got a lighting adjustment where you can adjust how bright or dark it is in your house. And then you've got an option to just move to the front door. None of the houses are that big. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is. If I go to outside of the house, I'm going to show you the outdoor housing menu real quick. And again, if I go social, housing, there are a few different options here. So outdoor furnishings, same thing. I go into that. It's where I change the outdoor furnishings. Same with the color. Remodel exterior. Here's where it starts to get a little different. Now, instead of having the walls and the lighting and the flooring, I've got the roof, the wall, the window style, the door style, a roof decoration, a wall decoration, a placard style, and a fence style. All of those things can be customized with whatever versions you want. Some of the housing walls, like the carbuncle version, take up the whole thing. They'll use everything. They determine the walls and things like that. But a lot of the housing types that you get, you can really customize it the way you want. If I wanted to have a different window style, I could have a different window style, things like that. So a lot of customization you can do with what your house looks like once you've bought that permit. Paint exterior. You can dye most of the exterior items on your house as well. And really what it'll do is, see the blue trim kind of centered there, and see how my roof is kind of that burnt orange color? That is what you're dyeing. So just like when you dye anything else, it's probably not going to dye the whole thing. It'll just dye the highlights. All right, and then after the color painting stuff, you've got estate settings. Now we're going to go into my private estate to look at this. You can name your estate. So mine's called Hill House because it's on the top of the hill. And this is what will show up when people look at the district Ethernet option when they're looking at the list of houses. And it's also on the placard. You can edit a greeting, and I'll show that in a minute. You can change guest access settings. So private estate access means that anyone here can enter your house. Teleportation means that any of your friends can teleport right to your house. If you don't want people looking at your house, just leave them turned off. If you don't mind, turn them on. Estate details shows you what's on the placard. I'll cover that in a minute. Storeroom status shows how much room you have left for your different houses. for storage and then also placement. And then also if you are able to relocate your house, it shows you that status. So I would recommend keeping this both green because you never know when you might want to relocate. In fact, it looks like I need to do something with my outdoor furnishings, get some of those out of storage, because what will happen is when you move, it takes everything in your house and puts it into storage. So between storage and what you've placed, if you don't have enough space for both to fit, then it'll show as a red cross like you see here. Shared estate settings lets you, when you share, you can go in here and add a new tenant and give them access to different things in your house and the ability to customize your house. So you can share your estate with someone else, which is kind of cool, and that's where you go to do that. And then you can relinquish the land, which I'm not going to click on because I don't even care to know what that looks like. All right, so we're going to click on the placard here, and you'll see that we're at Hill House. It's owned by myself. It's plot 51 in the 17th Ward in Lavender Beds. It's a medium house. And I just wanted to say welcome to Hill House. Please enjoy. Messages are appreciated. Why people don't buy message books for their houses is beyond me. Some of the main attractions in the house are the message book. It's an immersive experience, and it's got a pretty sweet aquarium wall, if I do say so myself. So that is Housing 101, team. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you have any questions whatsoever, let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, team. Going to take a drink. Going to take a drink.